Welcome back to GTN Coach's Corner. This week we have a bit of a training theme going on, including how to return to training after some time off. Will club sessions suffice if you've got a specific race in mind? How to balance training for another sport as well as triathlon. Plus, how do you get your heart rate high enough on the bike and how to run in sand. In case you didn't realize by now, you just need to use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner to submit any question you might have, and you can do it beneath this video or any of our other videos. And before we crack on, just a quick reminder to click on the icons on the screen now so that you make sure you won't miss any more of our videos. Right, let's crack on then with this first one from Oliver C, who says, "Hi GTN. Could you do a piece about how to do hard intervals and efforts on the bike? I really struggle with the technique to get my heart rate up into zone 4 or 5. It's hard on the legs, but my heart rate stays fairly low. I know cadence is part of the equation, but what else is there?" Well, Oliver, to start with, everyone has different high heart rates when it comes to running and cycling, and I personally find that my heart rate will go much higher running than it will cycling. It does depend to a certain extent which sport you come from first, but there are other factors involved as well. So to start with, I would make sure that you've got your heart rate zone specifically for your cycling and you're not using your running ones, because that could be part of the equation there. And then beyond that, there's other things that will affect it, such as the temperature. Maybe when you're cycling outdoors on these efforts, it's colder, your heart rate will naturally be a little bit lower. You've also got the heart rate lag. If they're really short, intense intervals, remember that your heart rate is going to take quite a while to actually pick up and get there. So that's when, if you did have a power meter, that might be, well, it would be the more accurate way to measure it. And if not, you're going to have to start to learn how to use feel. And yes, you touched on it in your question. Cadence is probably the biggest one. You'll notice if you're doing big gearing work, your heart rate just won't get high, but gosh, that will burn your legs. But for something like this, when you are specifically trying to work your heart rate, you want to really increase that cadence and get your legs pumping, and you'll soon find your heart rate starts to increase. If you're still struggling and you just maybe are mentally finding it hard enough to work that hard on the flat, try and go and do some hill reps. As long as you've got low enough gearing so you can keep your cadence high, you'll find that hill reps should at least shoot your heart rate through the roof, and you'll be able to reach those target zones. But just make sure that those target zones are right in the first place. But good question. Okay, moving on to Servino. "Hi, I'm doing the Thor Beach Triathlon in Denmark in August, where the run is on the beach and the sand. Do you have any suggestions? How do you specifically train for sand running other than actually running on the sand?" Well, Servino, you've obviously pointed out the obvious point there, but there's certain techniques that you can actually adapt when doing your training on the sand, and also part of that training can actually be adapted on land. But it's about having a high cadence, because if you think that the longer you've got your feet on the ground, the more you're going to be sinking into that sand. So you want to try and actually shorten your stride length a little bit and keep your feet moving faster, so you're reducing the contact time because you've got an uneven surface or a moving surface beneath you. You also want to think a little bit about your body position and try to, maybe you already are, but try to move your side forward lean a little bit more so you've got more of a mid and a forefoot strike. Because if you're doing a heel strike, you've got a long time to actually move your foot through the sand, and the sand is going to displace and move around it with that. And it's almost an efficient way to run through sand is a little bit of a shuffle, which you see some triathletes adopting that style anyway. So you want to imagine you're kind of trying to stay fairly flat, and you're really concentrating on moving yourself forwards rather than up and down as much as you would maybe on the road. You're just not going to have that spring or that return from the sand, and the harder you push to move up, you're actually going to be pushing the sand away from you. So part of it is accepting that you'll be a little bit slower to then become more efficient. It's a really hard one, because sometimes when you work harder on the sand, you don't necessarily go faster, and that does take a little bit of mental training as well. So just try and relax and use your arms to really drive you forwards, but try to kind of keep your stride in a sense efficient. But be careful if you're doing a lot of training on the sand. Just be aware that every stride and every bit of sand will have a different density and will move differently. And if you're running on a beach, they tend to be on a slight camber, obviously down towards the sea. So if you're not careful and you suddenly go to doing a lot of training in the sand, you can actually get injuries. Even if you're running on somewhere that's entirely flat, your gait will be emphasized with the way you push out, and your feet will be moving in a different way. So just bear that in mind as you do build that up. And you don't need to build it up a huge amount, because at the end of the day, the fitter you are, the easier you will find running on sand as well. So I wouldn't get too bogged down, but good luck with that race. It sounds pretty awesome. And now we have a question from Teresa Almeida. Hey GTN, I train consistently every week by joining the local triathlon club sessions and doing some extra sessions. Should I, before a race, follow a specific training program and ditch the club training sessions? Well, Teresa, first question back to you is, are you actually training for a race that quite a few of your club members are doing? Because if so, you've got nothing to lose by speaking to the coach and seeing if they can start to adapt some of the sessions towards your goal and some of the other goals. Even if not, if you go and speak to them and explain this is what you're wanting, they might be able to adapt certain aspects within those sessions that you can change within it. So say that you need to have a bit of an easier week, then maybe you can just move down a group and train in the easier swim lane or go out with the easier group on the bike or the run. So there's certain ways you can adapt still training with the club and getting the full benefit that you need. And the fact that you're already doing some of your own sessions will make that sort of complement a little bit easier, and you get a lot from training with others. So I would personally say don't go away from that altogether if this is where it's got to you already at this point in your career. And then I guess it, to a certain extent, depends on how serious you're taking this race and how much you want to achieve. Because yes, a personalized program is going to help you reach your absolute optimum performance, but it's a balance of having the enjoyment, having the social aspect of training with others. And if you can combine the two, that's probably the perfect recipe. So depending on how much knowledge you have of your own training and whether you're devising those sessions or you have another coach doing it, communication is key. If your tri-club coach can adapt, but if not, just see if you can do your own adaptation. So maybe you go on the club and train with them when you know it's a really intense session that you would want to do anyway, and you can get everything from that. Or on the flip side, you go and do your easy runs or your easy bike rides with the club where you know that that really doesn't matter, but you're still spending time with others and you're getting their benefits of that. So I would suggest an amalgamation of the two, which sounds a little bit like what you're doing already, and the more personalized that training can be, the more potential you've got, but it is a balance. And good luck with your race, whichever it is, and hopefully some of your club members are doing it as well. Right now, we have a question from Mame Mini. Well, they start by saying great answers, thank you. Some pressure here, I think. How do athletes best return from extended leave periods, e.g. pregnancy, bereavement, sickness, etc.? Well, Mamie, patience is key here, and it obviously depends how long you've had off as to how long you need to take that build back in. But it can be really tempting. If you've had a break, you're going to feel really fresh, hopefully, and seriously motivated and just loving training. But you need to make sure you take a check, because you can go full into it for a couple of weeks and then suddenly find that everything catches up and you start to get niggles or injuries. So make sure you go in nice and calmly with some structured plan. And this is where triathlon is brilliant, because you actually have 3 different sports, so you can balance that, and each of them can complement each other. So it's not like going back into running when you just can only do one sport and you want to do it every day, but break it up. So use your swimming maybe as your recovery, and then doing your longer bike rides as your longer exercise. Keep the run a bit shorter to start with, because that's weight bearing. But it does depend on what conditioning you have, and when you say time off, if that's from absolutely nothing that you're starting from, but try to build those blocks. And still, even though it's going to be nice and light and aerobic to start with, you still want to have waves of, let's say, a few weeks of training, and then have a little bit of an easier period, and also factor in rest days. And the longer you have to build up for whatever your goal is, the better, because you can go about enjoying it. And one of the best things of returning to training, whatever aspect or whatever sport that is, when you've had some time off, you're going to see such significant gains early on, and it's really motivating, and it can be quite addictive. So just still, I think my main point here is to enjoy that process, but don't get too carried away, because building those foundations at this early stage are really important. And then later on, when you start to do the faster work or the heavier work, it really will be payback, and you will reap those benefits at the time. So enjoy that process, however long you've had off, and welcome back to training, I would say. And our final question comes from Nicholas Lepage. Well, another one here who loves our Coach's Corner format. Well, thank you, Nicholas. He says, I have a question concerning multiple sports training. I have been doing CrossFit for 4 years and have recently started triathlon. I've just completed my first Olympic try and have set my sights on a 70.3. Been struggling to find an appropriate training plan, as adding a full triathlon training plan to a ready packed CrossFit week would be too much. Do you have some pointers on how to balance the 2 sports? My aim is to keep CrossFit strength while becoming a better endurance athlete. Well, Nicholas, well done on your first Olympic, and great that you're training for a 70.3. And also well done on identifying the fact that adding in a full triathlon training plan to your full CrossFit week would be too much, because yes, it totally would be, and you wouldn't really be doing well at either. So I think you've already started to identify there that triathlon could be starting to take the priority, and you'll still have the base from CrossFit and you'll be able to incorporate that, because any actually good triathlon training program would include strength and conditioning. So I don't know how much flexibility you have with that CrossFit plan, but if you can try to maybe stay away from the aerobic activities that CrossFit do and use all of those sessions within your triathlon, and just keep it more at the strength and the conditioning work that will complement running. So any stuff that's really working on your core, your single leg, upper body is going to help your swimming. And if you can then obviously reduce that down massively, but increase your triathlon training, and I would say that needs to be the more of the emphasis. So they can work together. I mean, we even did a video, you might have already seen it, on CrossFitter versus triathlete, and there are lots of crossovers, and you will find that you've got a brilliant base to go into this new multi-sport, and you shouldn't have to leave something that you really enjoy as well, because your triathlon training should be fun and you should be able to find the balance. But it will take a little bit of a challenge and a bit of a compromise, which anything when you're training for multi-sports is going to be. However, you've already got experience in almost training for multiple sports, because CrossFit isn't just one thing, you do lots of different things within that. So that will set you up really well, and good luck with that 70.3. It should be a wonderful journey for you, and you can always come back to your CrossFit and you're not going to lose all of it either. So I'd say you've got a great base to be working towards that 70.3, and you should be able to enjoy the journey. Well, good luck. Let us know how you get on in the comments section below. And that brings this week's Coach's Corner to an end. If there's a question that has been triggered from something you've listened here and you want to know a little bit more about, then do let us know using that hashtag GTN Coach's Corner, and give us a like on this video.